Have you ever looked at a happy couple and thought, they must have it all? What if I told you that behind the smiles, behind the matching outfits and anniversary dinners, was a secret that could kill? In the heart of Houston, Texas, a powerful businessman invited his closest friends and family to celebrate 12 years of marriage. The evening sparkled with elegance, music, and wine, but before the night was over, someone would be dead. And the true nature of trust, betrayal, and control would be exposed for the world to see. Welcome to True Crime Atlas. This is the chilling story of Mitchell Kingsley, his wife Lauren, and Jeremy Dalton, the man who shattered their marriage and lost his life because of it. Stay with us, because the truth in this case isn't buried in mystery. It's hiding in plain sight. And by the end, you'll see just how far one man will go to protect his pride. Before we dive in, thank you so much for being here. If you appreciate real human stories that go beyond headlines, please like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to True Crime Atlas. Every click helps us keep telling these stories with care and honesty. Now, let's start at the beginning. Mitchell Kingsley was the kind of man people described as polished. Tall, clean-cut, always in a suit. His business, Kingsley and Dalton Ventures, was one of the top investment firms in the state focused mostly on oil and commercial real estate. He wasn't flashy, but he was powerful, and people respected him. He lived with his wife, Lauren Kingsley, in a quiet but upscale neighborhood in Houston. Their home was immaculate white columns, trimmed hedges, a fountain in the driveway. The type of house where everything had a place and nothing ever felt out of order. Lauren matched the house perfectly. She was poised, warm to strangers, and known for her charity work. But behind her graceful smile, she was quietly struggling. 12 years into the marriage, she felt more like a trophy than a partner. Mitchell, always working, had grown distant. Their dinners were quiet. Their weekends were spent apart. She missed feeling heard. Enter Jeremy Dalton, Mitchell's business partner and longtime friend. Jeremy was the opposite of Mitchell. Where Mitchell was reserved, Jeremy was magnetic. He lit up every room he walked into. With his easy smile and sharp wit, he made people feel special, especially Lauren. It started small. Jeremy would stay late after meetings, chatting with Lauren while Mitchell took calls in his office. Then came the occasional lunch, then late-night texts. Lauren didn't think it would go anywhere. She just liked the attention. But it did go somewhere. Within a few months, Lauren and Jeremy were deep into an affair. They met in hotels. They shared secrets. Jeremy even told her he loved her, that he'd never felt this way about anyone. He wanted them to leave Houston together, to start fresh. Lauren wasn't sure. She still cared for Mitchell, in some distant way. But more than anything, she feared what would happen if he ever found out. She wouldn't have to wonder for long. Mitchell was no fool. He'd noticed changes. Lauren had become distracted, distant. She started taking calls in other rooms. She smiled more when texting than when talking to him. But what confirmed everything was a forgotten tablet. Lauren had used it weeks earlier to check her email while Mitchell was away on a business trip. She'd forgotten to log out. When Mitchell opened it to check his portfolio reports, the email app popped up. Dozens of messages, some short and flirty, others emotional, desperate, romantic, all from Jeremy. He didn't yell. He didn't confront her. He just stared at the screen. And quietly, he began to plan. After reading those emails, Mitchell didn't sleep for 2 days. He went to work like normal, answered calls, smiled at meetings, but inside, something had changed. He wasn't the kind of man who exploded in anger. He didn't throw things or make threats. Mitchell believed in control, image, strategy. And now, he had a new strategy. Instead of confronting Lauren or Jeremy, he started preparing for their upcoming anniversary party. The 17th of December would mark 12 years of marriage, and Mitchell planned to make it unforgettable. He ordered custom invitations, hired a professional catering company, brought in a local jazz trio, and arranged for the back garden to be decorated with white lights and floral arches. It was going to be elegant, personal, and filled with people they both knew. A celebration of love. Lauren was surprised by the effort. In past years, Mitchell had skipped out on their anniversary plans for business trips. But now, he was involved in every detail: the color of the napkins, the guest list, even the dessert options. He never said a word about the affair, and that scared Lauren more than anything. The night of the party, the Kingsley home looked like something from a magazine. Candles flickered across long tables set with gold chargers. Waiters in black suits carried trays of champagne. The sound of soft jazz floated through the air as guests filled the space with polite laughter and small talk. Lauren wore a pale blue dress with a silver pendant Mitchell had given her the week before. He'd clasped it around her neck and kissed her cheek like nothing was wrong. Jeremy arrived just after 8 p.m. He wore a gray-tailored suit and carried a bottle of aged wine as a gift. When he and Mitchell shook hands at the door, neither man flinched. "You made it," Mitchell said smoothly. "Wouldn't be the same without you." To guests, everything looked perfect. Just 3 successful adults hosting a beautiful celebration. But the air between them was tight like stretched thread, waiting to snap. As the evening continued, Lauren avoided Jeremy. They hadn't spoken in person in nearly a week. Jeremy had been pushing her to leave Mitchell. But she wasn't ready. Not yet. She kept her distance, smiling at guests, making small talk, sipping wine. Mitchell noticed. He noticed everything. By 10 p.m., most guests had moved outside to enjoy dessert under the garden lights. The pool sparkled under hanging lanterns. The band took a short break, and people wandered, chatting in small groups. Lauren slipped away briefly to the kitchen, and when she returned, Jeremy was gone. She asked around quietly. No one had seen him leave. She started walking toward the back garden when she saw a group gathered near the pool, their faces frozen in shock. Someone was floating in the water. She pushed through the small crowd, and then she saw him. Jeremy. Face down, arms slack, not moving. A scream rang out Lauren's. People rushed into the water. 2 men pulled him out and laid him on the stone deck. Someone yelled to call 911. Another began chest compressions. But there was blood dark red, trailing from the back of Jeremy's head and mixing with the water. Mitchell stood at the edge of the patio. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared. Within minutes, sirens lit up the street. Police and paramedics arrived. Guests were ushered inside, given blankets, and asked to remain on site for questioning. Officers taped off the pool area and began their investigation. The preliminary report was clear. Jeremy had suffered blunt force trauma to the back of the head. He hadn't drowned. He had been killed. The detectives asked everyone where they had been around 10 p.m. Some had been inside. Some were in the back, near the dessert tables. A few said they heard a thud, but thought it was a speaker falling or someone tripping. Lauren was questioned privately. She admitted that she and Jeremy had been having an affair. Her voice cracked as she said it. "We were going to tell Mitchell tonight. After the party. We didn't want to hide anymore." The detective nodded but asked a chilling question. "When was the last time you saw him alive?" Lauren hesitated. "Around 9:30, we argued. Then I walked away." She didn't know it yet, but surveillance cameras in the backyard had recorded her movements and someone else's. The Kingsleys' mansion was well secured. There were 3 outdoor security cameras covering the front entrance, the driveway, and the back garden near the pool. The system recorded motion-triggered clips stored locally on a server in Mitchell's home office. When detectives asked for the footage, Mitchell handed it over without hesitation. "We've had these cameras for years," he said calmly. "Feel free to take anything you need." Officers reviewed the recordings. Around 9:25 p.m., one clip showed Jeremy and Lauren walking into the garden together. They stood by a hedge for about 4 minutes, partially hidden but still visible. Their body language was tense. Lauren folded her arms. Jeremy gestured sharply. At one point, Lauren turned her head away as if wiping tears. Then, she walked off alone, back toward the house. Jeremy stayed behind. At 9:40 p.m., another clip showed Mitchell stepping out of the house through the back door. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't holding a drink. He walked slowly toward the garden path, the same direction Jeremy had gone. That was the last time the camera captured Jeremy alive. The next day, detectives brought Mitchell in for questioning. He remained calm, composed, polite. "Yes, I walked out to the garden around that time," he admitted. "I needed a minute to clear my head. It was a long night." When asked if he saw Jeremy, Mitchell shook his head. I didn't know anything had happened until people started yelling." He expressed shock and sadness. "Jeremy was my partner for over a decade. We built our company together. This has been hard." Detectives didn't push him that day. But they knew they had to dig deeper. When they sent the poolside footage to forensic analysts, something unusual appeared. On one of the decorative garden lights near where Jeremy's body was found, there were traces of blood and skin. It was a heavy, cast-iron fixture, and the injury on Jeremy's skull matched its shape perfectly. Mitchell's fingerprints were also found on that same light. Once the forensics came back, detectives built their timeline. Lauren and Jeremy were seen arguing. She walked away. Mitchell left the house a few minutes later, walking straight toward the area where Jeremy was last seen. The injury wasn't something that could happen from a fall. It was a deliberate strike. Jeremy's body position in the pool, face down, arms slack, suggested he had been unconscious or already dead before hitting the water. The guest list confirmed Mitchell had no alibi during that 10-15-minute window. He was alone, unaccounted for. But the motive was just as strong. Investigators found the emails between Lauren and Jeremy on the Kingsley's home tablet. One message, sent weeks before the party, included a line from Jeremy. "Let's tell him the truth. You deserve better. We both do." Another one, sent from Lauren. "I can't live this lie anymore. After the anniversary, no more secrets." Mitchell had read those messages. And days later, Jeremy Dalton was dead. 2 weeks after the party, Mitchell Kingsley was arrested at his office. He didn't resist. In fact, he stood up from his desk, adjusted his blazer, and said, "I figured this might happen." The news shocked Houston's elite. Headlines read, "Business tycoon arrested for partner's murder," and "Love triangle ends in poolside death." Lauren stayed out of the spotlight. She gave one short statement through her attorney. "I did not commit this crime. I told the truth. I loved Jeremy, but I never wanted anyone to get hurt." Mitchell was charged with first-degree murder. Prosecutors believed the act was premeditated, not something done in a fit of rage, but something planned, calmly and carefully. They argued he had every reason to kill Jeremy. The betrayal, the emails, the risk to his marriage, and his business reputation. The security footage, forensic evidence, and digital trail told a simple, painful truth. Mitchell didn't explode. He executed a plan. Mitchell Kingsley's trial began the following summer at the Harris County Criminal Courthouse. Despite the media attention, the courtroom remained eerily quiet as opening statements were made. Mitchell arrived each day in a crisp suit, calm, as if attending a board meeting rather than standing trial for murder. The prosecution focused on 3 pillars: motive, opportunity, and physical evidence. They began by walking the jury through the story: the broken marriage, the affair, and the betrayal that unraveled Mitchell's world. But they didn't rely on emotion alone. The district attorney showed photos of the blood-stained pool deck, the cast-iron garden light that matched the wound, and the fingerprints found on it. They also played the footage that showed Mitchell walking out into the garden just minutes before the splash was heard. They pointed out the lack of panic on his face when Jeremy's body was found. His best friend, his business partner, his closest ally found dead, the prosecutor said. And not a single tear, not a single gasp. Because Mitchell already knew what had happened. On the fourth day of the trial, Lauren Kingsley was called to testify. She entered the courtroom wearing a simple black dress. Her voice shook as she sat down, but she didn't look away from her husband once. "I loved him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who?" the prosecutor asked. "Jeremy," she replied. "I loved Jeremy. But I didn't kill him. And I never imagined Mitchell would." She admitted to the affair. She admitted that it was wrong. But she said she had no part in planning anything violent. Her intention, she claimed, was to tell Mitchell the truth after the party when the guests were gone and they could talk privately. "I was scared," she said. "But I thought if I was honest, maybe we could all move on. In some way." Under cross-examination, Mitchell's attorney tried to paint Lauren as manipulative, as someone who used both men for comfort and security. But her pain was real. Her tears, quiet and steady, left an impression on the jury. Mitchell's defense team argued that the case was based on circumstantial evidence. They claimed that Jeremy could have been attacked by someone else, that the security footage didn't show the act itself, that the blood on the garden light could have come from a fall. They reminded the jury that no murder weapon was found in Mitchell's possession. No eyewitness. No direct proof of intent. Is it tragic? Yes, the defense attorney said in closing. But don't confuse a failed marriage with a planned murder. This is a man being punished for being silent and betrayed not for committing a crime. But the prosecution's closing hit harder. He planned the party. He created the perfect setting. He knew Jeremy would come. He knew where to find him. And he made a choice, a deadly one. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. There was no outburst, no crying. Mitchell simply bowed his head. At sentencing, the judge spoke slowly. "Mr. Kingsley, you were a man of success, wealth, and influence. You could have walked away from this with dignity. But instead, you let pride guide your hands and you took a life." Mitchell was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lauren was not present for sentencing. Her attorney read a short statement. "There is no justice that can undo what has been done. But I am thankful. The truth was seen, and I pray we all find peace." Mitchell's company, Kingsley and Dalton Ventures, dissolved within 3 months. Employees were laid off. Investments dried up. The once admired name became poison in Houston's business world. Lauren sold the house and moved away. Some say she lives in Austin now. Others say she left the state. She changed her last name and deleted all her social media. Whether or not she found peace, no one really knows. Jeremy Dalton's family held a small private memorial. They never spoke publicly about the case, choosing to mourn in silence. Mitchell remains behind bars in a maximum security Texas facility. His appeals have been denied. He does not speak to reporters. No interviews. No letters. Just silence. When people in the community talk about Mitchell Kingsley today, it's never just about what he did, it's about what he lost. He had power, money, influence, a successful business, a beautiful home. He wasn't an outsider or a man with a long criminal history. He wasn't dangerous in the way people expect killers to be. He was a man who had been hurt, humiliated, and betrayed. But instead of choosing healing, he chose destruction. At any point, he could have walked away. He could have filed for divorce, ended the partnership, sold the house, rebuilt his life elsewhere. But he didn't. Mitchell didn't want to move on. He wanted to win. He wanted to leave the situation not just whole but dominant, in control, and that need cost a man his life. What makes this story so haunting is that no one involved was a stranger. Mitchell and Jeremy had been partners for over 10 years. They built something together. They traveled together. They trusted each other. Lauren and Mitchell had 12 years of marriage, shared homes, holidays, a life. She knew his routines, his moods, his silence. And Jeremy, he wasn't just some reckless stranger. He had become part of that family. But emotions don't always follow logic. Love doesn't guarantee loyalty. And pride doesn't disappear just because you have everything. Mitchell never raised his voice, never made threats. But that didn't make him any less dangerous. His violence came in silence, through a smile at the front door, a toast at dinner, and then a single, deadly strike. It was premeditated, controlled, precise, and that's what made it so chilling. Some true crime stories are filled with mystery. This one isn't. There were no masks, no strangers in the dark, no shocking third-party twist. This was a crime of emotion, of ego, heartbreak, and betrayal. And maybe that's what makes it hit harder. Because it could happen in any wealthy suburb, any clean-cut couple, any business partnership built on handshakes and trust. It didn't take a criminal mastermind. It took pain, left to rot, secrets, left to fester, and a man who cared more about control than consequence. And in the end, everyone lost. If this story made you feel something, if it made you think about trust, relationships, or the quiet power of emotional pain, we hope you'll stay with us. At True Crime Atlas, we don't just tell stories about crime, we tell stories about people, the lives behind the headlines, the choices that define us, and the lessons we often learn too late. So, if you haven't yet, please like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to True Crime Atlas for more real, human stories that go beyond the headlines. We appreciate your time, your curiosity, and your heart. And as always, stay safe, stay aware, and never assume the calmest voice in the room is the one without a secret.